Captain Marcus Webb sat in his small cabin aboard the starship Aurora and stared at the strange object on his desk. The thing looked like a crystal that had been carved into the shape of a flower, but it glowed with soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. When it first touched it 3 hours ago, words had appeared in the air above it, written in glowing letters that hurt his eyes to look at directly. The message was simple but confusing. Someone wanted him to come to a wedding. Not just any wedding, but a royal wedding on a planet called Valeria Prime. The invitation said he was being honored as a representative of the human race, chosen to witness the union of Princess Lyra and Prince Kale. Marcus had never heard of either of these people, and he certainly had no idea why anyone would want a human at their wedding. Marcus picked up the crystal again and watched the words reform in the air. The letters shifted and changed until they became English words he could read easily. The technology was far beyond anything humans had developed, which made sense since most of the galaxies seemed to be centuries ahead of Earth in almost every way. He had been traveling through space for 2 years now as part of the first human diplomatic mission to make contact with alien civilizations. So far, the results had been mixed. Some species were curious about humans and wanted to learn about Earth. Others seemed to think humans were primitive and barely worth talking to. A few had been openly hostile, though nothing had led to actual fighting yet. The Aurora was currently docked at Nexus Prime, a massive trading station that served as neutral ground for dozens of different species. Marcus had come here hoping to make new contacts and learn about trading opportunities, but instead he found this mysterious invitation waiting for him in his quarters when he returned from a meeting with some lizard-like merchants who spoke in clicking sounds. Arya, his AI companion, materialized as a hologram next to his desk. She appeared as a simple blue outline of a woman, since Marcus preferred not to have his AI look too human-like. It helped him remember that she was a computer program, even though she often seemed more intelligent than most people he knew. "You have been staring at that invitation for 3 hours," Arya said in her calm, measured voice. "Have you made a decision about whether to accept?" Marcus set the crystal down carefully. "I don't know anything about these people or their customs. What if I do something wrong and cause some kind of diplomatic incident? What if this is some kind of trap?" "My analysis suggests the invitation is genuine," Arya replied. "The Valerian Empire is one of the most powerful civilizations in this sector of the galaxy. They control over 100 star systems and have technology that surpasses most other species. An invitation from them is not something to be dismissed lightly." "But why me?" Marcus asked. "I'm nobody special. There are other human diplomats who have more experience and better training. Perhaps that is exactly why they chose you." Arya said, "You have a reputation for being honest and straightforward. Many alien species find human diplomacy to be confusing because humans often say one thing while meaning another. You do not have that problem." Marcus laughed, though there was no humor in it. "You mean I'm too simple to be properly sneaky?" "I mean you are genuine, which is rare in galactic politics. The Valerians are telepathic. Captain, they can sense deception and hidden motives. Perhaps they specifically want someone whose thoughts are uncomplicated." The idea that aliens might be reading his mind made Marcus uncomfortable, but he tried not to think about it too much. Arya had explained telepathy to him before. Most telepathic species could only sense strong emotions and surface thoughts, not dive deep into someone's memories or secrets. Still, the idea bothered him. "What do you know about this wedding?" he asked. Arya's hologram flickered as she accessed her databases. "Princess Lyra is the only child of King Theron of the Valerian Empire. Prince Kale is the heir to the Astran Kingdom. The two civilizations have been at war on and off for over 300 years. This marriage is designed to create a permanent peace treaty between them." "A political marriage," Marcus said. "That explains why they want witnesses from other civilizations. They want everyone to see that the peace is real." "Exactly. Your presence would show that even newcomers like humanity recognize the importance of this alliance." Marcus stood up and walked to the small window in his cabin. Outside, he could see the massive bulk of Nexus Prime stretching away in all directions. Ships of every size and shape were docked at the station's many ports. Some looked like the sleek silver vessels favored by the advanced civilizations, while others were rough and blocky like human ships. A few were so alien that Marcus could not even guess how they worked. "How long would I be gone?" he asked. The invitation mentions festivities lasting several days. Travel time to Valeria Prime will be approximately 1 week each way. So 3 weeks total. Marcus considered this. The Aurora was scheduled to remain at Nexus Prime for another month, while repairs were made to her navigation systems. He could easily be back in time. There is another fact to consider. Arya said the Valerians have never invited humans to participate in their royal ceremonies before. This could be the beginning of a formal relationship between our civilizations. The trading and technological opportunities could be enormous. Marcus knew she was right. Humanity needed allies and trading partners if they were going to survive in a galaxy full of more advanced civilizations. Earth's resources were limited, and there were species out there with weapons that could destroy entire planets. Making friends with powerful empires like the Valerians was not just good policy. It was necessary for survival. "All right," he said, finally sent a message accepting the invitation. "Already done." Arya replied with what sounded almost like satisfaction. "I took the liberty of preparing an acceptance message an hour ago. I was simply waiting for you to reach the obvious conclusion." Marcus shook his head. Sometimes his AI was too smart for her own good. What should I expect when I get there? Valerian culture is complex and very formal. They value honor, tradition, and proper behavior above almost everything else. Their society is organized around family groups and clan loyalties. The royal family has ruled for over 2,000 years, and they trace their authority back to the first Valerians to develop telepathic abilities. What do they look like? Humanoid, but taller than most humans. Their skin has a blue tint that becomes more pronounced when they are emotional. Their eyes are larger than human eyes and usually silver in color. Most Valerians live for approximately 200 years. Marcus tried to imagine what it would be like to meet these people. He had dealt with many alien species during his travels, but most of them had been traders or merchants encountered in neutral locations like Nexus Prime. This would be his first time visiting an alien homeworld as an official guest. What about their customs? What should I know to avoid insulting anyone? Valerian greeting customs involve touching the palms together and bowing slightly. Direct eye contact is considered respectful, but staring is rude. They do not shake hands as humans do. Physical contact between strangers is generally avoided unless it has ceremonial significance. What about the wedding itself? What will I be expected to do? Wedding ceremonies vary between different Valerian clans, but royal weddings follow ancient traditions that have not changed for centuries. As a guest, you will primarily be expected to observe and show respect. There may be opportunities to participate in certain rituals, but declining politely is always acceptable. Marcus nodded. It sounded straightforward enough, though he suspected the reality would be more complicated. Alien customs always seemed simple when Arya explained them, but actually dealing with real aliens was never as easy as the briefings made it sound. "When do we leave?" "The invitation requests your presence in 5 days. I have already plotted a course and submitted a flight plan with station control. We can depart whenever you are ready." Marcus looked at the crystal invitation one more time. The soft blue glow seemed almost hypnotic, and he found himself wondering what the princess looked like. Was she marrying Prince Kael because she loved him, or was this purely a matter of politics? Did she have any choice in the matter, or was she simply doing her duty for the good of both kingdoms? He realized he was thinking about her as if she were human, which was probably a mistake. Alien psychology was often very different from human psychology. What seemed tragic or romantic to a human might be perfectly normal and acceptable to a Valerian. "Arya, prepare the ship for departure," he said, "and see if you can find any more detailed information about Valerian wedding customs. I want to be as prepared as possible." "Of course, Captain." I should mention that the Valerian language has 17 different words for the concept of honor and 8 different forms of greeting, depending on the social status of the people involved. Marcus sighed. This was going to be more complicated than he thought. The Valerian royal palace was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. The entire structure seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal that rose from the ground like a mountain of blue ice. Spires twisted upward in impossible spirals, and bridges of pure light connected different sections of the building. As the shuttle approached the landing platform, Marcus could see that the crystal walls were not solid, but filled with flowing patterns of light that moved like liquid fire. "Welcome to Valeria Prime, Captain Webb," said the Valerian official who met him at the shuttle. The alien was tall and graceful, with the blue-tinted skin Arya had described. His silver eyes seemed to look right through Marcus, and when he spoke, his voice had a musical quality that made the words sound like singing. "I am Commander Vex, Royal Protocol Officer. King Theron sends his greetings and hopes your journey was pleasant." Marcus pressed his palms together and bowed slightly, trying to remember the greeting customs Arya had taught him. "Thank you for the invitation. I am honored to represent humanity at this celebration." Commander Vex smiled, which made his blue skin glow slightly brighter. "The honor is ours. It has been many years since humans visited our world. Come, the festivities have already begun." As they walked through the palace corridors, Marcus tried not to stare at the wonders around him. The walls were covered with moving pictures that seemed to be made of living light. Gardens floated in midair, filled with plants that sparkled like jewels. Music played from somewhere, but he could not see any instruments or speakers. The sound seemed to come from the crystal itself. "The wedding ceremony will take place in 3 days," Commander Vex explained as they walked. "Until then, there will be various celebrations and traditional events. You are welcome to participate in any activities that interest you, though we understand that some customs may be unfamiliar to humans." "What kind of activities?" Marcus asked. "Dancing, games of skill and strategy, storytelling contests, and the harmony circles. Tomorrow there will be the Feast of Unity, where representatives from both kingdoms will share food and drink as a symbol of the coming peace." They entered a vast hall filled with aliens from many different species. Marcus recognized some of them from his travels, but many were completely unknown to him. In the center of the room, a group of Valerians were performing what looked like a dance, but their movements were perfectly synchronized, and they seemed to be floating a few inches above the floor. Their bodies glowed with shifting colors that matched the rhythm of the music. "That is quite beautiful," Marcus said. "It is the dance of minds," Commander Vex replied. "The dancers are sharing their thoughts telepathically to create perfect harmony. Would you like to meet some of the other guests?" For the next hour, Commander Vex introduced Marcus to various ambassadors and nobles from across the galaxy. Most were polite but distant, treating him like a curiosity rather than an equal. A few seemed genuinely interested in learning about Earth and human culture. Marcus did his best to answer their questions, though he often felt like he was explaining why primitive cave dwellers deserved to be taken seriously. As the evening wore on, Marcus noticed increased activity near one end of the hall. A group of Valerians in elaborate robes had gathered around someone he could not see clearly. The crowd parted slightly, and Marcus caught his first glimpse of Princess Lyra. She was stunning, even by alien standards. Her blue skin had an opalescent quality that made it seem to contain trapped starlight. Her silver hair fell to her shoulders in waves that moved as if they were underwater. Her eyes were the brightest silver Marcus had ever seen, and when she looked in his direction, he felt as if she could see directly into his thoughts. "That is Princess Lyra," Commander Vex said quietly. "She is considered one of the most gifted telepaths of her generation, as well as a skilled diplomat and scholar." Marcus watched as the princess spoke with various guests. She seemed comfortable and confident, but there was something in her posture that suggested she was not entirely happy. When she smiled, it did not quite reach her eyes. Marcus wondered if she was nervous about the wedding or if something else was troubling her. "And the tall one next to her is Prince Kale of Astoria," Commander Vex continued. Prince Kale was impressive in a completely different way. Where Princess Lyra seemed graceful and thoughtful, Prince Kale looked like a warrior. His skin was darker than most Valerians, with a greenish tint that Marcus had not seen before. His eyes were gold instead of silver, and his movements had a predatory quality that made Marcus instinctively wary. "The Astorians are somewhat different from us," Commander Vex explained, apparently noticing Marcus's reaction. "They are more direct in their approach to most things. Prince Kale is a renowned military commander who has won several important battles against the rebel planets in his sector." As if sensing their conversation, Prince Kale looked in their direction, his golden eyes fixed on Marcus with an intensity that was distinctly unfriendly. Marcus felt like he was being evaluated as a potential threat, which seemed ridiculous given that he was obviously outmatched by every alien in the room. "Perhaps we should introduce you to the royal couple," Commander Vex suggested. Marcus wanted to refuse, but he knew this was exactly the kind of diplomatic opportunity he was supposed to pursue. He followed Commander Vex through the crowd, trying to look confident and dignified despite feeling completely out of place. "Your Highness," Commander Vex said with a deep bow, "may I present Captain Marcus Webb of the Human Diplomatic Mission." Princess Lyra turned toward them with a graceful motion that reminded Marcus of a dancer. Up close, she was even more impressive. Her telepathic abilities seemed to create a subtle pressure in the air around her, like the feeling just before a thunderstorm. "Captain Webb," she said in accented but perfect English, "welcome to Valeria Prime. I have heard interesting reports about your species' recent emergence onto the galactic stage." "Thank you, Your Highness. I am honored to witness this historic occasion." Prince Kale stepped closer, and Marcus could feel hostility radiating from the alien prince like heat from a fire. "Humans," he said in a voice that sounded like gravel grinding together, "your people are very new to space travel, are they not? What could you possibly understand about the significance of this alliance?" The question was clearly meant as an insult, but Marcus had dealt with hostile aliens before. "You are right that we are newcomers," he replied calmly. "But sometimes fresh eyes can see things that others miss. We may not understand all the details of your history, but we recognize the importance of peace between great civilizations." Princess Lyra looked surprised by his response, and Marcus thought he saw approval in her silver eyes. Prince Kale, however, seemed even more annoyed. "Peace," Prince Kale said with a laugh that had no humor in it. "Humans know nothing of real war. Your little conflicts on your single planet are games compared to the battles we have fought across star systems." "Perhaps," Marcus said, "but we have learned that the most important victories are often won without fighting at all." For a moment, Prince Kale looked as if he might say something harsh in response. Then Princess Lyra placed a gentle hand on his arm, and his expression softened slightly. "Captain Webb speaks wisely," she said. "The greatest strength is knowing when not to use force." Prince Kale nodded stiffly, but Marcus could tell he was not convinced. The conversation continued for a few more minutes, with Princess Lyra asking thoughtful questions about Earth and human culture, while Prince Kale remained mostly silent and suspicious. When they finally moved on to speak with other guests, Marcus felt relieved. The encounter had gone better than he had expected, but he could tell that Prince Kale viewed him as some kind of threat. Marcus could not understand why, since he was obviously no match for any of the warriors present and represented a civilization that could barely defend its own solar system. "That went well," Commander Vex said quietly. "Princess Lyra seemed quite interested in your perspective." Prince Kale did not seem to share her enthusiasm. Prince Kale is protective of his bride and suspicious of outsiders. It is natural for him to be cautious. Marcus nodded, but he suspected there was more to Prince Kale's hostility than simple caution. The alien prince had looked at him as if Marcus represented some kind of personal challenge, which made no sense at all. The rest of the evening passed pleasantly enough. Marcus participated in several conversations with other guests and even tried some of the local food, which tasted like a combination of honey and lightning. He watched more traditional dances and listened to story singers who created elaborate tales using telepathic images that appeared in the air above their heads. As the celebration wound down, Marcus found himself thinking about Princess Lyra. Despite the formal setting and the presence of her intended husband, he had felt a connection with her during their brief conversation. She had seemed genuinely interested in his thoughts and opinions, treating him as an equal rather than a primitive curiosity. He told himself this was probably just good diplomatic training on her part, but he could not shake the feeling that there had been something more personal in her attention. The thought troubled him because he knew it was dangerous to develop personal feelings in a diplomatic situation, especially when the person involved was about to marry someone else. As Commander Vex escorted him to his guest quarters, Marcus promised himself he would maintain proper professional distance for the remainder of his visit. He was here as a representative of humanity, not as a private individual, and he could not afford to let personal emotions interfere with his duties. Unfortunately, promises to oneself are often the easiest ones to break. Marcus woke the next morning to find a message waiting for him from Commander Vex. The formal invitation was written in flowing Valerian script that his translator device converted into English as he read. Today would be the Day of Challenges, a traditional celebration where guests could participate in various contests of skill and honor. The message mentioned that participation was voluntary, but highly encouraged as a way to show respect for Valerian culture. After breakfast, Marcus made his way to the palace's central courtyard where dozens of aliens had gathered around various activity stations. Some were physical contests involving tests of strength and agility, while others seemed to focus on mental challenges like puzzle solving and strategy games. In one corner, a group was engaged in what looked like artistic creation. Painting would light itself on floating canvases. Captain Webb called a familiar voice. Marcus turned to see Princess Lyra approaching, wearing a flowing gown that seemed to be made of crystallized water. I hoped you would join us today. These celebrations are one of our oldest traditions. I would be honored to participate, Your Highness, though I should warn you that humans may not be very competitive against more advanced species. Princess Lyra smiled, and her skin glowed slightly brighter. The contests are not really about winning or losing. They are about showing courage and effort in the face of challenges. That is why we call it the Day of Challenges rather than the Day of Victories. As she spoke, Marcus noticed that Prince Kale was nowhere to be seen. When he asked about this, Princess Lyra's expression became slightly guarded. Prince Kale is attending to some urgent diplomatic matters with his advisors, she said. The union of our kingdoms involves many complex details that must be resolved before the ceremony. Marcus nodded, though he suspected there might be more to Prince Kale's absence than simple diplomatic business. He had noticed tension between the prince and princess the night before, though he had assumed it was just pre-wedding nervousness. Which challenge would you like to try first? Princess Lyra asked. Marcus looked around at the various contests. Most of them seemed designed for beings with abilities far beyond human capacity. The strength contest involved lifting objects that probably weighed more than his entire shuttle. The agility test required participants to move through obstacle courses that defied gravity. The mental challenges seemed to assume telepathic abilities that humans simply did not possess. Perhaps something that relies more on creativity than raw ability, he suggested. Princess Lyra led him to a station where participants were trying to solve what looked like three-dimensional puzzles made of light and sound. The goal was to arrange floating geometric shapes into patterns that created harmony both visually and musically. Most of the other contestants were using their telepathic abilities to sense the correct arrangements directly. I am not telepathic, Marcus explained to the contest coordinator. An elderly Valerian with skin so pale it was almost white. That is quite all right, the coordinator replied. Many species lack telepathic gifts. You must simply use your other senses and your intuition. Marcus studied the floating shapes for several minutes, trying to understand the logic behind their arrangement. The other contestants were working quickly, their mental abilities allowing them to feel the correct solutions almost immediately. Marcus had to rely on observation and trial and error, moving the shape slowly and listening to how the sounds changed with each adjustment. To his surprise, he found that his different approach actually gave him some advantages. While the telepathic contestants were sensing the patterns directly, they sometimes missed subtle details that were obvious to someone looking at the problem from the outside. His human perspective allowed him to see geometric relationships that were not immediately apparent to minds trained to think telepathically. After 20 minutes of careful work, Marcus successfully completed his puzzle. He was not the fastest contestant, but his solution was elegant and created a particularly beautiful harmony of light and sound. Several Valerians gathered around to study his work, commenting on the unusual approach he had taken. Very impressive, Princess Lyra said. You found a solution that none of our telepaths discovered. Your method was completely different from ours. Sometimes being different is an advantage, Marcus replied. When everyone thinks the same way, they all miss the same possibilities. Princess Lyra looked at him thoughtfully. That is a very wise observation. Perhaps that is why my father invited humans to witness this ceremony. Fresh perspectives can reveal truths that familiarity obscures. They moved on to other challenges throughout the morning. Marcus participated in a storytelling contest where he shared a human legend about a prince who gave up his kingdom for love. The Valerian audience seemed fascinated by the emotional intensity of human stories, which apparently differed significantly from their own more intellectual narrative traditions. In a strategy game similar to chess but played with living pieces that moved according to their own personalities, Marcus again surprised everyone by developing tactics that none of the other players had considered. His lack of telepathic ability forced him to observe behavior patterns directly, which led to insights that telepathic players missed because they were focused on mental states rather than physical actions. As the day progressed, Marcus noticed that Princess Lyra stayed close to him, watching his performance with growing interest. She asked many questions about human culture and thinking, seeming particularly fascinated by the way humans approach problems without telepathic abilities. "Your species must be very resilient," she said during a break between contests. "To develop advanced civilization without mental telepathy requires tremendous creativity and determination. We had to learn to communicate in other ways," Marcus explained. "Art, music, written language, mathematics. When you cannot share thoughts directly, you must find other methods to connect with each other. And yet you seem to understand us quite well, even without sharing our mental gifts." Marcus considered this. Understanding does not always require the same abilities. Sometimes it just requires paying attention and caring about what others think and feel. Princess Lyra was quiet for a long moment. That is something I had not considered. We are so accustomed to sensing thoughts directly that we sometimes forget to simply observe and listen. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the center of the courtyard. Prince Kale had arrived with several of his advisors, and he was looking around the celebration with obvious displeasure. His golden eyes quickly found Marcus and Princess Lyra, and his expression darkened. "Princess Lyra," he called out in a voice that carried clearly across the courtyard, "I see you have been entertaining our primitive guests." The words were polite on the surface, but the tone was unmistakably insulting. Conversations around them began to fade as other guests sensed tension in the air. Princess Lyra's skin flickered with brief flashes of deeper blue, which Marcus had learned was a sign of strong emotion in Valerians. "Captain Webb has been participating in our traditional challenges," she replied carefully. "He has performed quite admirably." Prince Kale laughed, but the sound was harsh and unpleasant. "How amusing. Perhaps our human friend would like to try some of the more serious contests. The test of courage, for instance." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He did not know what the test of courage involved, but Prince Kale's tone suggested it was not something a human was likely to survive. Several of the Valerian nobles looked uncomfortable, and Commander Vex stepped forward with concerned expression. "Prince Kale," Commander Vex said diplomatically, "the test of courage is traditionally reserved for those seeking to prove their worthiness for important positions or honors. Perhaps something less formal would be more appropriate for a diplomatic guest." "Nonsense," Prince Kale replied with false cheerfulness. "Captain Webb has been impressing everyone with his abilities. Surely he would not wish to be seen as a coward who only attempts the easy challenges." Marcus realized he was being trapped. If he refused a challenge, he would lose face not only for himself but for all of humanity. If he accepted, he would probably be seriously injured or killed in whatever test Prince Kale had in mind. Either way, Prince Kale would achieve his goal of humiliating the human representative. Princess Lyra looked distressed, her skin now flickering between normal blue and much darker shades. "Prince Kale, this is not necessary. Captain Webb is our honored guest, not a candidate for royal position." "But he seems so interested in our customs," Prince Kale said with mock innocence. "And the test of courage is one of our most ancient and honored traditions. How could we deny him the opportunity to experience it fully?" Marcus realized that backing down was not really an option. Too many people were watching, and the political implications for human-alien relations could be severe if he appeared cowardly. He also suspected that Prince Kale would find other ways to humiliate him if this opportunity was missed. "I would be honored to attempt the test of courage," Marcus said as calmly as he could manage, "though I should warn you that human abilities are limited compared to your own." Prince Kale's smile became genuinely pleased for the first time since Marcus had met him. Excellent. The test will begin in 1 hour, giving you time to prepare. I do hope you will not disappoint us. As Prince Kale walked away with his advisors, Princess Lyra moved closer to Marcus. Her expression was deeply worried, and her skin had settled into a dark blue that was almost purple. You do not have to do this, she said quietly. There are diplomatic ways to withdraw from the challenge without losing honor. Marcus looked around at the crowd of aliens, watching him. Some seemed curious. Others appeared concerned, and a few looked like they were already planning his funeral. What exactly is a test of courage? Princess Lyra hesitated before answering. It is a series of physical and mental challenges designed to push a person to their absolute limits. Traditionally, it is only attempted by those seeking to marry into the royal family or compete for positions of great honor and responsibility. Marcus felt his stomach drop, and Prince Kale knows this. He knows exactly what he is asking of you. The test has a failure rate of nearly 30%, even among trained Valerian warriors. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, trying to think of a way out of the situation that would not make things worse. Unfortunately, he could not see any good options. He was committed now, whether he liked it or not. The test of courage took place in an ancient chamber beneath the palace that Marcus had not known existed. The room was carved from black stone and lit by crystals that pulsed with red light, giving everything a threatening appearance. Strange symbols covered the walls, and the air felt thick with the weight of centuries of tradition and countless previous tests. Marcus stood at the center of the chamber, wearing the simple white robes that had been provided for the ceremony. Around him, dozens of Valerian nobles watched from elevated platforms carved into the stone walls. Princess Lyra sat beside King Theron in the place of honor, her face pale with worry. Prince Kale stood near the ceremonial controls, looking pleased with himself. Commander Vex approached Marcus, carrying an ornate crystal device. This is a neural interface that will allow the testing crystals to monitor your physical and mental state during the challenges, he explained quietly. It will also provide translation for any instructions given during the test. What exactly am I going to face? Marcus asked. The test of courage has 3 parts, Commander Vex replied, his voice carefully neutral. First is the trial of strength, which tests physical capability and endurance. Second is the trial of wisdom, which challenges mental ability and problem-solving. Third is the trial of heart, which examines courage, determination, and moral character. And if I fail? Commander Vex hesitated. The testing crystals will end the trial if you're in serious danger, but participants have died during this test. Prince Kale has the right to set the difficulty level, and he has chosen the maximum setting typically reserved for elite warrior candidates. Marcus felt his mouth go dry. Prince Kale was clearly trying to kill him, or at least cause him enough injury to remove him as a threat. The question was why Prince Kale saw a single human diplomat as dangerous enough to risk creating a diplomatic incident. Begin the first trial, Prince Kale announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. The floor beneath Marcus suddenly shifted, forming itself into a series of obstacles that looked like they had been designed by someone with a very twisted imagination. Massive stone blocks swung back and forth on chains, while jets of fire erupted from holes in the ground. Spinning blades emerged from the walls, and sections of the floor disappeared to reveal pits filled with spikes. The trial of strength requires the candidate to reach the far side of the chamber within 10 minutes, Commander Vex announced. The difficulty increases as time passes. Marcus studied the obstacle course, trying to identify a safe path through the deadly mechanisms. Most of the spectators probably expected him to fail immediately, but Marcus had grown up in the industrial districts of Earth where dangerous machinery was a daily hazard. He understood how mechanical systems worked, and he could see patterns in the timing of the obstacles that a telepathic being might miss. Instead of rushing forward, Marcus spent the first minute simply watching the movements of the various traps. The swinging blocks followed predictable arcs, the fire jets operated on regular cycles, and the spinning blades had brief gaps in their rotation patterns. It was like a deadly dance, but it was still a dance with rules. When he finally moved, Marcus did not try to match the speed and strength of a Valerian warrior. Instead, He used timing and careful observation to slip through the obstacles when they created openings. He crawled under swinging blocks at the bottom of their arcs, jumped over fire jets when they were in their cooling cycles, and squeezed through gaps in the spinning blades during their momentary pauses. The spectators watched in amazement as the small human navigated the deadly course with what looked like supernatural timing. Several times it seemed certain that Marcus would be crushed or burned, but he always managed to find a way through. His approach was completely different from the brute force methods typically used by Valerian warriors, but it was undeniably effective. Marcus reached the far side of the chamber with 30 seconds to spare. He was breathing hard and covered in sweat, but he was uninjured. The crowd erupted in surprised applause, and even King Theron looked impressed. Prince Kael's expression had shifted from confident pleasure to angry disbelief. "Impressive," Prince Kael called out, though his tone suggested he found it anything but impressive. "Let us see how well you perform in the trial of wisdom." The obstacles disappeared, and the chamber transformed itself again. This time, the floor became a smooth black surface covered with glowing symbols that formed complex patterns. A series of crystalline screens appeared in the air around Marcus, each displaying what looked like mathematical equations written in alien script. The trial of wisdom requires a candidate to solve the pattern of minds, Commander Vex explained. You must determine the underlying logic that connects all the symbols and use that knowledge to predict the next sequence in the pattern. Marcus studied the symbols carefully. His neural interface translated the basic mathematical concepts, but the logic behind their arrangement was not immediately obvious. The pattern seemed to involve not just numbers, but also colors, shapes, and musical tones that played when he touched different symbols. Most Valerians would approach this challenge telepathically, sensing the emotional and mental associations that connected the various elements. Marcus had to rely on pure logical analysis, looking for mathematical relationships and systematic patterns that did not depend on telepathic insight. After 15 minutes of careful study, Marcus began to see the underlying structure. The patterns were not based on simple mathematical progression, but on complex relationships between multiple variables that created harmonious combinations. It was like a musical composition written in mathematics, where each element had to work together to create a unified whole. Once he understood the basic principles, Marcus was able to solve the pattern sequences much more quickly than anyone expected. His mathematical training from Earth gave him tools for analyzing complex systems that complemented the intuitive approach favored by telepathic species. Where Valerian minds would feel the correct answers, Marcus could calculate them. When he completed the final sequence, the crystalline screens glowed with brilliant light and chimed with beautiful harmonious tones. The crowd applauded again, and Marcus noticed that Princess Lyra was watching him with something that looked like wonder. Even some of Prince Kael's advisors seemed impressed by the human's performance. "Adequate," Prince Kael said coldly. "Now for the final trial." The chamber transformed one last time, but this change was different from the others. Instead of creating physical obstacles or mental puzzles, the room filled with a strange mist that seemed to glow with its own inner light. The mist swirled around Marcus, and suddenly he was no longer standing in the stone chamber. Marcus found himself in what looked like a perfect replica of his childhood home on Earth. He was standing in the kitchen where his mother had taught him to cook, surrounded by familiar sights and smells that brought back powerful memories. Everything was exactly as he remembered it, down to the small crack in the window that had been there since he was 10 years old. The Trial of Heart shows a candidate visions drawn from their own mind. Commander Vex's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. You must choose between your deepest desires and your moral obligations. The testing crystals will judge the courage and honor of your choices. As Marcus stood in his childhood kitchen, the scene around him began to change. He saw himself as a young man, full of dreams about exploring the stars and making contact with alien civilizations. Then the vision shifted to show him his current life, traveling through space as a diplomat for humanity. But now a new possibility appeared. Marcus saw himself staying on Valeria Prime, working as an advisor to the royal court, learning about advanced alien technology, and living a life of comfort and importance far beyond anything he could achieve on Earth. All he had to do was abandon his mission and betray the trust that humanity had placed in him. The vision was incredibly tempting. Marcus could see himself living in luxury, respected by powerful aliens, free from the struggles and limitations of human civilization. The testing crystals were showing him everything he had ever wanted, offering it to him in exchange for abandoning his duty. Marcus stood in the illusory kitchen for a long time, considering the choice. He thought about his lonely life aboard the Aurora, the constant struggle to prove that humans deserved respect from more advanced species, the knowledge that he would probably spend the rest of his life fighting for recognition that might never come. Then he thought about Princess Lyra, whose intelligence and kindness had impressed him more than any alien he had ever met. The vision showed him a life where he could stay near her, learn from her, perhaps even become someone worthy of her friendship. It was the most tempting offer he had ever received. But Marcus also thought about the crew of the Aurora, waiting for him to return with news of potential allies and trading partners. He thought about the billions of humans on Earth who were counting on people like him to build relationships that would ensure humanity's survival in a dangerous galaxy. He thought about the trust that had been placed in him and the oath he had taken to serve humanity's interests above his own. With great effort, Marcus pushed away the visions of comfort and luxury. "I cannot abandon my responsibilities," he said to the empty air. "My duty is to my own people, no matter what personal benefits I might gain by betraying them." The kitchen faded away, and Marcus found himself back in the stone chamber. The mist cleared, and he could see the spectators watching him with expressions of amazement and respect. Even Prince Kale looked stunned by what had just happened. "The candidate has completed all 3 trials," Commander Vex announced, his voice filled with something that sounded like awe. The testing crystals judged a performance to be exceptional in all categories. King Theron rose from his seat, his silver eyes fixed on Marcus with an intensity that was almost overwhelming. "Captain Webb, you have achieved something remarkable today. Very few beings have ever completed the test of courage at maximum difficulty, and none have done so with such unusual methods." Marcus felt exhausted, both physically and emotionally. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I hope I have brought honor to both our species." "You have done far more than that," King Theron replied. "According to our ancient laws, completion of the test of courage grants a candidate the right to request a boon from the royal family. What do you ask for, Captain Webb?" Marcus looked around the chamber, suddenly realizing that something very important had just happened, and he was not sure what it meant. Princess Lyra was staring at him with an expression he could not read, while Prince Kale looked like he wanted to challenge Marcus to personal combat. "I need time to consider what would be appropriate to request," Marcus said carefully. King Theron nodded. "Take all the time you need. Tomorrow is the wedding ceremony, and then we will hear your decision." As the crowd began to disperse, Marcus wondered what he had gotten himself into. He had survived Prince Kale's attempt to humiliate or kill him, but something told him that his real troubles were just beginning. Marcus woke on the morning of the wedding to find his quarters filled with gifts from Valerian nobles who wanted to honor his achievement in completing the test of courage. There were crystals that sang when touched, bottles of liquid starlight, and books written in languages he could not read but somehow understood when he opened them. The most impressive gift was a small device that projected holographic star maps, showing trade routes throughout the galaxy. Commander Vex arrived as Marcus was examining a particularly beautiful crystal sculpture that seemed to contain a miniature thunderstorm. "The king requests your presence in his private study before the ceremony begins," he said. "There are matters of importance to discuss." Marcus followed Commander Vex through corridors he had not seen before, past gardens where flowers sang in harmony and fountains that flowed upward toward the ceiling. King Theron's study was a circular room with walls made entirely of transparent crystal that offered a panoramic view of the city below. The king stood looking out at his kingdom, his hands clasped behind his back. "Captain Webb," King Theron said without turning around, "yesterday you accomplished something that has changed the situation considerably. When Prince Kale challenged you to the test of courage, he did not expect you to succeed. None of us did. I was fortunate, Your Majesty." King Theron turned to face him, and Marcus was surprised to see worry in the alien ruler's silver eyes. "Fortune had little to do with it. You succeeded because you approached the challenges differently than anyone expected. You found solutions that our telepathic minds could not conceive. I simply use the abilities I have, since I lack the abilities you have." Precisely, King Theron said. And that is why we have a problem. According to our ancient laws, anyone who completes the test of courage at maximum difficulty has proven themselves worthy of the highest honors our kingdom can bestow. Traditionally, such a person would be offered position as royal advisor, marriage into the noble houses, or other significant rewards. Marcus felt a chill as he began to understand the implications. Your Majesty, I am honored by such recognition, but I am here as a diplomat representing humanity. I cannot accept rewards that might compromise my neutrality or create conflict of interest. That is exactly the response I hoped you would give, King Theron said with what might have been relief. It confirms that our judgment of your character was correct. However, the law is clear about your right to request a boon, and there are political complications we must address. Before Marcus could ask what complications, the door opened and Princess Lyra entered. She was dressed in ceremonial robes of silver and blue that made her look like a figure from a fairy tale, but her expression was troubled. "Father, I must speak with you about the wedding," she said, then noticed Marcus and stopped. "Captain Webb, I did not know you were here. Princess Lyra was coming to discuss the same matters I wish to speak with you about," King Theron said. "Perhaps it is better that we address everything together." Princess Lyra looked uncertain, but she moved closer to where Marcus and her father stood. "There have been disturbing developments regarding Prince Kael," she said carefully. "My advisors have discovered evidence that he has been secretly negotiating with rebel factions in the outer systems." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. What kind of negotiations? "Military support in exchange for territorial concessions after our marriage," Princess Lyra replied. "It appears that Prince Kael views our union not as a path to peace, but as an opportunity to expand Astran influence through political manipulation." King Theron nodded grimly. "We have also learned that yesterday's challenge was not simply an attempt to humiliate you, Captain Webb. Prince Kael believed that if he could provoke an incident involving the human representative, he could use it to justify abandoning the peace treaty. Your success has frustrated his plans considerably. So the wedding is off?" Marcus asked. "That is what we must decide," King Theron said. "If we proceed with the ceremony despite this evidence, we risk legitimizing Prince Kael's claim to influence over Valerian affairs. If we cancel the wedding, we risk war with Astoria unless we can provide an alternative solution." Princess Lyra looked at Marcus with an expression he could not quite read. "There is another option," she said quietly. "According to our laws, anyone who completes the test of courage has proven themselves worthy of marriage into the royal family. Captain Webb could invoke that right." Marcus stared at her in shock. "Your Highness, I could not possibly. It would solve several problems," King Theron interrupted. "Prince Kael's treachery provides legal grounds for ending the engagement. Your success in the test of courage provides legal justification for an alternative arrangement. A marriage between Princess Lyra and yourself would create an alliance between Valeria and humanity, which would serve as a counterbalance to Astran aggression." "But I am human," Marcus said weakly. "Surely there are biological and cultural incompatibilities that would make such a union impossible." Princess Lyra stepped closer to him, and her skin began to glow with soft blue light. "Valerian marriage bonds are primarily telepathic and emotional rather than purely physical. The ceremony creates a mental connection that allows two beings to share thoughts and feelings regardless of their species. There have been successful marriages between Valerians and other telepathic species in the past." "I am not telepathic," Marcus pointed out. "No, but yesterday's test showed that your mind is capable of interfacing with our crystal technology in ways we did not expect. The marriage crystals might be able to create a bridge between your human consciousness and Valerian telepathic abilities." Marcus felt overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. This is moving very quickly. Yesterday I was just a diplomatic observer, and now you are suggesting I marry into the royal family of an alien empire. "I understand your hesitation," Princess Lyra said, "but I must ask you to consider the alternatives. If we proceed with the wedding to Prince Kael, I will be bound to a man who has already betrayed our trust and will certainly use our marriage to further his own ambitions. If we cancel the wedding entirely, both kingdoms will likely go to war and thousands of people will die." King Theron moved to a control panel built into one of the crystal walls. I am receiving reports that Astron military forces are already moving toward our border. Prince Kale appears to be preparing for the possibility that his plans will be discovered. We have very little time to make a decision. Marcus looked out at the crystal city spread below them, thinking about all the people whose lives would be affected by whatever choice he made. He thought about Princess Lyra, who had shown him nothing but kindness and respect despite the fact that he represented a primitive species. He thought about King Theron, who was willing to trust the future of his kingdom to an alien he had known for only 3 days. If I were to accept this proposal, Marcus said slowly, what would it mean for humanity? I am here as a representative of my people, and I cannot make decisions that might harm their interests. A formal alliance between Valeria and humanity would benefit both our species, King Theron replied. We could offer technological assistance and protection in exchange for access to human creativity and problem-solving abilities. Yesterday's test demonstrated that human thinking provides perspectives that even our most advanced minds cannot achieve. Princess Lyra moved even closer, and Marcus could feel the warmth radiating from her glowing skin. There is something else you should know, she said quietly. During our conversations over the past few days, I have used my telepathic abilities to sense your thoughts and emotions. I know that you feel the same connection that I do. Marcus felt his face grow warm. Your Highness, You may call me Lyra, she said with a smile, and you do not need to be embarrassed. The connection between us is real and strong, even without formal marriage bonds. I believe we could be genuinely happy together, which is more than I could ever hope for with Prince Kale. Before Marcus could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. Commander Vex burst into the room without ceremony, his usual calm composure replaced by urgent concern. Your Majesty, Astron warships have crossed into our territory. Prince Kale is demanding that the wedding proceed immediately, or he will consider it an act of war. King Theron straightened to his full impressive height. Send word to Prince Kale that the wedding will proceed as scheduled, but with a different groom. Captain Webb, I need your answer now. Marcus looked at Princess Lyra, whose silver eyes reflected both hope and determination. He thought about his comfortable life aboard the Aurora, his mission to establish diplomatic relations, and his duty to humanity. Then he thought about the woman standing before him, who was willing to trust her future to someone she had known for 3 days because she believed it was the right thing to do. I accept, Marcus said. I will marry Princess Lyra and do everything in my power to bring peace between our peoples. The wedding ceremony that took place 2 hours later was unlike anything Marcus could have imagined. Instead of Prince Kale standing beside Princess Lyra in the great crystal cathedral, Marcus found himself wearing ceremonial robes and holding ancient crystals that pulsed with energy that seemed to flow directly into his mind. The ceremony itself involved a telepathic bonding ritual that created a permanent mental connection between husband and wife. As the marriage crystals activated, Marcus felt Princess Lyra's consciousness touch his own, sharing thoughts and emotions in a way that was both intimate and overwhelming. For the first time in his life, he was not alone inside his own mind. The sensation was indescribable. Marcus could feel Lyra's intelligence, her compassion, her hopes for the future, and her genuine affection for him. In return, she experienced his memories of Earth, his determination to do what was right regardless of personal cost, and his growing love for her. When the ceremony was complete, they were no longer 2 separate beings, but a united pair whose thoughts and feelings were permanently intertwined. The crowd of nobles and dignitaries cheered as King Theron announced the creation of a new alliance between Valeria and humanity, with Prince Marcus as the official ambassador and liaison. Prince Kale's response was predictable. Within hours of the ceremony, Astron warships attacked Valerian border posts, beginning a conflict that would last for months. However, the alliance with humanity provided access to new strategic thinking and unconventional tactics that eventually led to Astron defeat and the establishment of lasting peace in the region. Marcus never returned to the Aurora, though he maintained regular contact with Earth and helped establish the first permanent human embassy on Valeria Prime. His marriage to Princess Lyra became a symbol of cooperation between species and led to similar alliances throughout the galaxy. Years later, When other humans asked him about his decision to give up his old life for an alien princess, Marcus would always say that some choices are not really choices at all. When fate offers you a chance to find love, peace, and purpose all at the same time, the only sensible response is to say yes and see where the adventure leads.